What's going on, guys? We are back for the final round of the 2017 United States Amateur Disc Golf Championship. And for the final round, we're going to be following Brandon Oleskie, Dylan Lhotak, Colin Poe, and Alec Anderson. It's basically the same card as the second round, except Colin Poe shot a great 55 his second round, sneaking his way into the lead card with these three guys. And as you can see by the scores here, it's going to be a pretty tight race for the final round. We have Brandon and Dylan at 13 under, Alec at 11 under, and Colin Poe at 10 under par. And just like with most tournaments, we're going to be starting on hole 1. Hole 1 here is 477 feet, downhill, and is a par 3. Like I've said many times before, if you have a great sidearm, throw on a big swooping sidearm with something fast and a little bit glidey is going to be a great shot here. Just as Dylan almost got, it was just a little inside, but he's still going to be down there looking for at least a pretty easy 3, quite possibly a 2. And if you do have a good backhand as well, you can go with a mid-range or fairway driver, which is what Brandon does here. And it does basically exactly what you want it to do. I think it just ended up a little too short. It wasn't quite high enough to get all the way over, but he's definitely going to be looking at a pretty close putt. Alec looking to do the same here. Unfortunately, he went a little too understable. Maybe not quite enough hyzer on that, so it just kind of dumped out on him. Thanks to gravity there. And then Colin with a great forehand. Gets it up there, gets it to the right. I think it goes a little too far right, though, unfortunately. He's going to be contending with some trees. Alec just laying up for his easy 3 right under the bucket. And Dylan does come up a little short, unfortunately, so he's just going to have to pitch up as well. And you can't see him, but Colin is in there. Again, he also went a little too far right, so he's just going to be pitching out for an easy 3. And Brandon with the closest look for birdie 2. Just outside the circle and just off the top of the basket. That would have been a great start for his round, but 3's round isn't bad to start. Obviously, you do want to get a birdie, but it's not the easiest par 3 on this course. You do have to throw a really good line with really good power and hopefully get the glide that you need to get out there. So taking 3s from everybody here is not bad at all. And Alec stepping up to just tap in his easy 3. And we'll be moving on to hole 2. Alright, and after hole 1, everyone takes a 3. Scores stay the same, but we go on to the only par 5 on the course. Again, unfortunately, I don't have a flyby of this hole, but it can be pretty easy, and it can also be very difficult as long as you play smart on this hole. If you try to bite off too much off the tee pad, that's when you can find yourself into some big trouble. That's when people kind of grip lock it into the shul on the right, or they try to go too far, but they end up way deep in the woods on the left. You just want to stay in the open the entire time, and that's exactly what everybody has done here. So Dylan's going to be up first, throwing what I now know is a leopard. Unfortunately, it's a little too flippy on that angle. Kind of drifted off to the right, but fortunately it is pretty open up there. He's going to have some lines to try to get up to the basket. Colin goes with another sidearm. Probably the most difficult way to play this hole, in my opinion, is if you go sidearm all the way. I know it can be done for sure. I know he's definitely got the talent for it. He's got a great sidearm. Just the way that the hole plays, it plays a little tougher that way. And then Brandon gets up there with a great shot, as does Alec here. They're showing you exactly how you should be playing this hole. Colin over here where Dylan's at, they're literally about 5 feet from each other. And Colin's got the better line because he's a little more to the right, so he's got a little more room to work with. But Dylan's got the same line here as well. They're both going to be up there looking for the birdie 4. And Brandon just tossing his putter up there, just a little to the right, but he's well within the circle. Alec looking to do the same here. Had a little more juice on it, so he goes a little longer, but he's definitely going to be looking at a an easier putt for 4. Colin goes a little high there for his birdie putt, but he should be tapping in for a 5. Dylan on the circle's edge for his 4, and nails it just over the lip of the basket. That was a great putt from Dylan there. Good recovery from where he was at off of his second shot. Alec just from inside the circle. Unfortunately, just kind of let that go a little early. Maybe a little bit of some timing issues, something like that. Colin's up here, looking to just save his 5. And just unfortunately hits the front of the cage, so he's going to be taking a bogey 6. And Brandon with the easiest birdie here, just maybe 5-10 feet or so, not even, for his birdie. And Alec and Colin are going to be tapping in for par and bogey. Not quite the start that they're looking for, but there's at least 16 more holes to go, so there's definitely some battles going to be happening here. It's just early on in the round, but going on to hole 3, this is a hole that you want to get. It's not super hard as long as you play it smart again. You don't want to go off to the right. You don't want to throw something that's flippy, and you just want to go down the fairway. If you end up hyzering out, but you continue to go forward, the only thing you really have to contend with is the barrier that kind of separates hole 3's fairway from hole 13's fairway, because if you land on top of that berm or a little too close to it, that's the only thing that can really hinder your shot. Otherwise, it's just wide open. And Dylan threw a great shot there with a PD2, got that little bit of flex out of it, and ended up falling to the left. So he's going to have a wide open shot. Same with Brandon here. He got it a little high. You kind of want to throw it downhill. Otherwise, you're throwing it just flat out. And as soon as it starts slowing down and hyzering, that's when it's just going to fade pretty far left. But again, that's not a big problem. And then we got Colin here throwing the first backhand of his round. He's definitely sidearm predominant, but it doesn't show here because he mashes his drive off of hole 3, and he called it so far left, and it wasn't even left at all. He had the best drive of the group for sure. Then we got Alec here, kind of close to that berm, but just far away enough from it that it didn't really affect him. But unfortunately, Brandon here is right up against the berm, so he's got to throw over all that grass and then try to get it about 400 feet or so, and comes up a little short, but he's going to have a long look for birdie. And then Dylan here with a very unencumbered second shot, just throwing a nice little hyzer. It's just going to skip up towards the basket. He's going to have a very close putt for 3. And then Colin, just a little closer than Dylan, goes sidearm in this hole and does the exact opposite of what Dylan did. But, I mean, they're both right there for their birdies. Just one backhand and one sidearm. We got Brandon here, circle's edge or so. Unfortunately, comes off the center of the cage. Putts are looking good. They're dead on. It's just the height is his only issue right now, unfortunately. And then we got Alec here, just a little right of it. But he's left himself a little work to do here for his par. And he nails it. Snakes it in on the left side a little bit, but hey, man, in's in. Doesn't matter how it happens. Colin makes sure to extend on his putt there. Great recovery from the last bogey that he had on hole 2 with a nice little drop-in 3. Same with Dylan here, and Brandon and Alec are going to be tapping out for par 4s. So we got Brandon at 1 under for the round, Dylan at 2 under for the round, and then even for Alec and Colin. Now we're off to hole 4, the hardest par 3 on the course. I don't even know how it's really a par 3. In my opinion, it should be a par 4. Just the way that the hole is laid out and where the pin location's at and how far it actually is. In my opinion, it's more of a par 4 than it is a 3. I think if they drop the tee pad back even 50 feet, it would make this a really legit par 4. But rules are rules for now. So par 3 it is. Dylan goes with the hyzer. He gets up there a good ways. He misses the gap, or he hits the gap that he needs to hit, and he's going to have a pretty easy look for his second shot. Colin goes with a sidearm and unfortunately just kind of blasts it into one of those early pine trees. And Brandon going here with my favorite line on this hole, which is an aggressive, safe shot, in my opinion, because it's wide open, and if it stalls out, you still have pretty much a wide open shot. If you end up going with the hyzer and you kind of hyzer a little too early, or you kind of crush it wide right a little bit, you don't really have much of anything. You're just kind of playing for the 4 at that point. And then we got Colin here, unfortunately, just throwing a couple shots into the trees here, just struggling a little bit to get through these windows, but he's got to try to get up and down for a 5 now. And he almost throws that one in. I thought that one was going in on camera, but he kind of slides past it a little bit, so he's going to have a little bit of work to do for his 5, but he's definitely going to be putting. And Alec there, just a little low on his drive, but he does skip up there pretty good ways. Unfortunately, Dylan kind of hangs it out wide a little bit and grabs one of the earlier trees. And he was quick to fire here, but he's just laying up just next to the basket for an easy 4. And then we got Alec here from just outside the circle. And unfortunately, it's just a little low again, which is easy to do on uphill putts. Uphill putts can be pretty difficult. You got to put a little extra juice on them than you're used to at the same kind of distances. And then we got Colin there. He was just inside the circle on the backside. Makes a great putt to save his 5. And then we got Brandon here. He didn't have much from where he was at, but he just laid up and is going to be taking the only 3 on the card as Alec and Dylan are tapping out their 4s here. So we got 1 par, which in my opinion, again, is a birdie. Then we got a couple 4s and a 5 by Colin, unfortunately. But we got room to make it up here on the par 5. It's 280 feet, and it is less luck boxy than the years past because they opened up the straight shot at it. By no means is it a gimme because there's trees that you have to avoid. You do have to throw a good shot. You just have to get through the gap. As Brendan does here, he kind of hits the early branch. Stalls him out to the left a little bit, but he's going to have a long look for birdie 2. And then Dylan here goes with the giant sidearm, which is really hard to film here, so I apologize for that. I was just trying to see where it was actually going to fall out, but it never actually fell. It was stuck at the very top of a tree that we ended up getting out after we walked up the fairway. And then Alec nails it right up the middle, just as Colin does here. And those are exactly what you want to do. In my opinion, I like the backhand at this a little more, but that's just me. We have Dylan laying up there for an easy 3. Alec with some lines to hit here and nails his putt for 2. That was absolutely sick. The line, you couldn't see so much on camera. It didn't justify the line that he actually hit, but that was a sick putt by Alec there. Then we got Brandon, again, just square off the basket, unfortunately. But then we got Colin here looking for a birdie 2 just inside the circle. Great putt, great recovery on the last 2 holes since hole 2. Definitely toned it up for missing his silly putt on hole 2. And then the other 2 just tapped out. Then we got hole 6 at 632 feet. It is a par 4. Probably one of my most favorite holes on this course. I know I've said it again multiple times, but I do love the layout of this hole. So really, you want to throw a 400-foot shot off the tee, try to punch through the gap as much as you can. Really, if anything, you want to land on top of the other hill. Landing short, it makes it pretty difficult. Luckily, Alec just kind of misses only a little bit. If he would have missed a little more, he probably would have really smashed that tree and had a really tough time with this. But he's on the other hill. He's a little short, so he's going to have a weird look at it. Then we got Colin going with a mashed sidearm. Gets up on top of the hill and even skips a little further up the hill. Brandon's up next, going with his green destroyer. Gets a nice little hyzer flip. Kind of rides the right side a little bit and gets past those 2 trees, which you do kind of want to avoid. Getting up next to those trees can be pretty cumbersome. And then Dylan going with another PD2. One of his favorites. Usually anyone who's throwing Discmania throws PD2s. They're pretty nice discs. But he gets up on top of the hill. Alec with a weird look, and he throws a really, really good shot from where he was at, in my opinion, because he had to throw really uphill, but kind of low to the hill to really get forward on his drive. So getting where he got was actually very, very impressive. And then we got Colin go with a sidearm. He comes up a little short. He's still on the side of the hill, just outside the circle. And then Dylan from probably the best spot of the card. Shows you exactly how you want to be playing this hole. And he touches the top of the hill. We're going to have to see if he actually stays there for his easy birdie. And Brandon just throwing an easy little hyzer. Skips up the hill a little bit, so he's going to be well within the circle for his birdie. Alec, unfortunately, just narrowly misses the basket again. Then we have Colin here. Unfortunately, hangs his out wide. I don't know if it got stuck on his hand or something, but after the last two putts, kind of was a little uncharacteristic. And then Brandon finally misses the bucket and nails the chain, so he's going to be taking a nice birdie 3 on this. And Dylan did skip a little long, unfortunately, and just comes up short on his putt, so we're going to have one birdie 3, a scary par 4 from Colin there. That was super top shelf. And then we got Alec just looking to do the same, but not as scary. And Dylan's just going to be tapping out for his 4. So we got Brandon with the only birdie 3, and then a bunch of par 4s on that hole. Still a pretty close race here. Colin's going to need to pick it up a little bit, but it's definitely there. We're not even on the back 9 just yet. But we are on hole 7. It is another par 4. Not even 500 feet, but the way that this hole plays, I don't see any super aggressive way to get up there. The couple trees that you need to miss off of the fairway really block any sort of aggressive line, even giant sidearms or anything. And then we had Brandon kind of nick off that tree and shoot off to the right. Alec does exactly what you want to do on this hole. Throw something fast and overstable, get out that gap and get to the left side, which is going to allow for a wide open second shot. Colin going with a backhand here as well. Unfortunately, just kind of lets that go super early. And then Dylan trying to match Alec there, which he does a little lower, but he's still going to have a great attempt for his second shot. And then Colin here going with a super risky line, in my opinion. Instead of throwing like an Anheuser placement shot, he's going with through the gap, and he grabs a couple trees on the way out. So he's going to have to throw a really good third shot to get up to the bucket. And Brandon was so far to the right of the gap that this backdoor route actually was opened up for him, and it was easier to try to get up there for birdie 3, if not an easy 4 over there. And then Colin with a mash sidearm up this hill. He put himself within the circle, so he's got a chance to save his par. And then Dylan wasn't left enough, so he has to throw this kind of big floating Anheuser thing. But he ends up floating right next to the bucket, so he's going to have a really easy putt for his birdie. And then Alec with the best drive of the group, with the easiest second shot of the group, shows you exactly how you want to play this hole, and just pins it on his second shot. And then as you can see, Brandon way over there just kind of laying up for his par. But it was the easiest job he could do from where he was at off of his tee. He was fortunate to actually kick so far right instead of not going right enough. It would have made it a lot more difficult, I would say. And then Colin makes a really nice putt to save his par. Dylan nails an easy birdie 3 there. And then Alec going to be tapping in for an easy 3 as well. And then Brandon with his lone par 4. All right, so a couple birdies, a couple pars on that hole. Moving on to hole 8, the big blind hyzer hole. It's 462 feet. It is a par 3. A much easier par 3 than in hole 1, I would say. It almost plays the same, but you want to throw like a big swooping backhand hyzer at this hole, and then you kind of got to get lucky through the trees. And again, unfortunately, filming from the tee pad on this hole, you're only going to get to see a few seconds of flight before the disc would actually disappear. So this is from the next tee pad. You're getting to see them shoot out of the gap and then up over the trees. Trying to do the best I can to get you to see the entire flight of the discs.
That was almost
and Dylan there was almost super parked on that, as I said in the other commentary while I was filming this. But we got Brandon up next.
Punch.
And he sneaks through all the trees and is right next to the basket. He's got, I don't know, 8 feet if that for his putt. And then Colin is up next. Again, throwing a backhand. I would imagine, I don't really see any sidearms on this hole if you have any sort of backhand. It doesn't take too much to actually get to this hole. And Alec here, he unfortunately clipped one of the early trees and it just dropped him straight down. So he has to contend with that tree. And unfortunately, he just kind of punches through all the leaves and he doesn't get up there quite. But he has a super sneaky gap to try to get there and almost nails his three. It just splashes out to the left side. That would have been one of the grossest threes on this hole. Like an unfortunate drive, unfortunate upshot, and then super nasty putt. And then we had Dylan there just laying up for his three. Colin with a look for two and just kind of, I don't know, he opens his hand a little early, so it just kind of left him short. But we got Brandon here with his chance and nails it with the only birdie two on the card, while everyone else is going to tap out for par, and Alec with the only bogey 4 on this hole. Colin super concentrating on his 5-footer. And then Alec just to tap in. Great form, Alec. Solid execution. High five there by Colin. So we got 3 under for Brennan, 2 under for Dylan, even for Alec, and 1 over for Colin. And on to the last hole of the front 9. It is a pretty difficult par 3. Not too many 2s on this hole, but it's not quite a par 4 because there's a ton of 3s on it. It's 439 feet uphill. And there's multiple lines to try to get there, but there's not a real definitive way to really kind of park this unless you have a super mash sidearm or a really good backhand turnover, or you could try to just punch through the trees and get lucky, which is, it can be pretty popular. It just kind of depends on how you want to play this hole. And as you can see, there's already Brandon with, he threw the backhand turnover, kind of came up a little low. Dylan went with the sidearm, punched through the center a little bit. I think he was just early on his actual release, but he should have a pretty clear look from where he was at. And then Colin and Alec both ended up on top of the hill. Alec looking to kind of give this a run, but more so just getting up and down for his 3. Same thing here with Colin. Just looking to throw it up by the bucket. Little half go. It was dead on, just a little too early. It kind of hyzered out. And then Brandon with a little bit of a tricky approach, but he's got a really good spin putt, so that shot's pretty routine for him. And then Dylan, as you can see in the bottom right hand of the screen, just throwing up the hill, and apparently he threw this a little too much on Anheuser, so he ended up a little right of the bucket. So he's going to be putting from probably just inside the circle, maybe a little closer, so it's going to be slightly downhill for him. And unfortunately, it just splashes out. It looks center chains. It just, the spin of the disc, it just kind of glanced off the chains, I guess. So unfortunately, he's going to be taking the only bogey 4 on this hole, while everybody here is just going to be tapping out for their 3s.
Nice, dude.
So adorable by Colin and Alec. These guys are like best friends or something, apparently. They putt together, play together, all that fun stuff. They're having a good time out there. So as things stand right now, Brandon is 3 under for the round, Dylan 1 under, Alec at even, and Colin at 1 over. And Brandon and Dylan are kind of pulling away a little bit. Alec's still in there, just a couple strokes behind. Colin is in need of getting some birdies to stay in contention with these guys. They're kind of pulling away from him a little bit. He's kind of on a dry streak right now, unfortunately. But thank you guys for watching. We will see you on the back 9.